three main evidence-based services. As we move further into it, then what will happen is additional services will be approved to be provided. So of the three that we have right now, we have a parent-child interaction therapy, multi-systemic therapy, and family functioning therapy. Again, those are three evidence-based services, and the only three that we can use that Family First will fund at this point in time. Again, luckily, in the county of Floyd, we do have providers that provide all three of those different services, which we, like I said, we are very lucky to have that. So again, that is the front side of the changes that we have. Now, on the other side, as I mentioned, we talked about congregate care last month. The changes that the federal government has made is they want to, of course, encourage children remaining out of foster care. So by doing that, I guess it's fair to say that it's more challenging to utilize federal 4E funding for foster care once a child enters into the system. So having said that, if a child does reach the level of congregate care and they are qualified or they do meet the requirements for Title 4E, in order to utilize the Title 4E funding, the agency has to follow certain protocols, which would be completing an IAC to determine Medicaid eligibility. Also a family partnership meeting. We also have to go to the court and have the judge approve the placement. We also have to have an assessor at the state level approve the assessment, approve the placement into the congregate care. If any of those things are done, then we're not allowed to use that Title 4E funding. And on the other side of that, if the Title 4E funding is denied, then of course the expectation is you're going to fall back on the CSA funding. But if you haven't done all of those things that you had to do up front with Title 4E, you can't fall back on the CSA either. And the danger of that is that could lead the county, a smaller county could easily be bankrupt with a bill of that size, because as you know, the congregate care services are very expensive. Now, as of July 1st, any psychiatric residential treatment facility, which is really the highest, almost the highest level of that congregate care, is being funded by Medicaid at 100%. And then as you move down to just the residential treatment homes, group homes, and any other congregate care placement, we're authorized to only use a qualified residential treatment program. So that's another level of approval that each one of these programs has to have through the state in order to qualify for the Title 4E funding. The last time I looked, there were around 48 providers in Virginia that were providing those services, which sounds like a lot, but when you break down 120 localities, it's really not. Of course, more and more providers are coming online and filing the application for approval as we move forward. So right now, luckily in Floyd County, we only have one child that's in congregate care, and that child is already under CSA funding, so we don't have to, we're not able to utilize the Title 4E at this point in time anyway. So I know that's a lot of information into just a real small little pocket, but are there any questions that I can clarify?
Well, I guess it's good to know that we only have one child that has reached that level. That truly is a blessing. And I know you'll work hard. What is the closest congregate care facility of a group type home to us?
Majority that we reach out to are going to be in Roanoke. And those are typically the group home settings. As you move toward the residential treatment facilities, those are more in places on the Eastern Shore, Richmond, and so they're much further away. And of course, we do strive to utilize least restrictive.
Absolutely. And
so we certainly try to utilize a typical ordinary local Department of Social Services foster home as a child comes into care. And then, of course, you would move up the chain. If that's not an appropriate level of care, you would go from the LDSS home to a therapeutic foster home. But if you pass the therapeutic foster home, that means you're in congregate care, group home, residential treatment, psychiatric residential treatment facility, and that's when the funding service stream would have to be Title 4E or CSA. And of course, CSA and Title 40 will also fund those lower placements in a regular foster home and a therapeutic foster home. But once you get to congregate care, then all of those stipulations come into play.
One of the things that you mentioned was that the federal government is moving away from foster care. Does that mean they want you to do congregate care?
No, they're really discouraging the use of congregate care.
Correct.
So what they're looking for is for you to utilize those funds to prevent the child from ever entering care in the first place.
Well, understood.
Right.
It's small. The pendulum has swung. Years ago, we had the preventive, then they decided they wanted to build facilities and stop on the prevention and more reaction. Now it's gone back to more preventive than reaction, so.
And of course, the therapies that they're coming out with, the evidence-based therapies, are very beneficial. And of course, we do have some of the providers here in Floyd. The programs are still in their infancy right now, so of course, as agencies are coming more on board with utilizing this funding, we're determining more and more ways to really focus on how to keep families together and preserve that family unit.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what everyone wants to do.
Yes, absolutely.
As long as it's safe for the child involved.
Exactly. I mean, child safety is the utmost concern. And of course, we also look at, we do everything that we possibly can to prevent a child from coming into care. Of course, we look to family and friends to divert children to outside of the possibility of having to come into care whenever possible.
So I noticed that your walk-ins last month were quite high.
Well, so what happened on July the 1st, we reopened to the public. Before that, we had been closed to the public.
Okay, that's why.
And so you'll know, I was going to actually bring that up because you notice a big shift in the drop-off box and the people that were actually walking into the agency.
Yeah.
Of course, it took a while for people to actually get used to that. We were still having the doorbell rung even though our door was unlocked. People were still thinking, I guess, that we were closed.
Right.
They had gotten so used to doing that. But we were able to also rearrange our waiting area downstairs to make some additional room so that people could actually social distance a little easier. And we were able to install some safety precautions and whatnot. So we're very happy to be able to reopen, and things are going quite well right now with that.
Excellent.
Any other questions? Well, thank you so much as always. I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks.
You too.
Thank you.
We have time for a few yours.
Start moving forward to some of my things. Let's see, where should we go? Just go to the main, I was gonna say, go to the carryover request. Your suggestion, carryover request? Okay. All right, yes, Cindy suggested, and seems like a great idea, to move to 9A, your carryover request to FY22 budget. And that is an action item. You will see that in your paperwork related to that in your packet.
Yeah, I know.
You were probably familiar with this format, I believe. Cindy's worked on this before. Okay. So if you have questions about any of this, we're happy to call up, but these are all the things that Cindy received a request to be able to carry forward the funds that had not been expended in the previous year.
Just as always, if you would insert my statement, please, I would appreciate that.
There was one that caught my eye, that was sort of funny, really, don't mean that, but it carried over $1.
Yeah. That was.
seen that and I thought, is that a typo? And I looked back.
No, there was a transfer.
Transfer.
There was not a carryover, there was a transfer for a dollar.
I just want to thank you again, Cindy, for the excellent explanations and laying things out. It makes it so much easier to look at the charts and understand, and I just wanted to thank you again for all your hard work.
And I would also, if I might, Mr. Chair, comment that, you know, if we ever had any question about Cindy's value, you'll notice, of course, she was smart enough to even help us out by setting out aside money for her payout when she retired. Most organizations don't do that, much less individuals. So this is part of what we know and love about Cindy, and we'll miss when she departs us. So that was really smart, very smart.
Let me make sure.
Okay. Mr. Chair, would you like us to move quickly to 9?
Well, they have to vote.
Yeah,
Oh, we have to vote. Okay, sorry, that's right. I apologize.
Take a motion to approve the carryovers.
So moved. Can I, as recommended or in total?
Well,
Like all of them
no, I did not recommend one. The animal control, he was asking to move over everything that they have left in their budget for the purchase of a used vehicle for the part-time animal control person. And while I totally agree that, and I probably should, while I agree that vehicle they have is probably old and worn out, I didn't feel like this was the proper way to do it. It should have been done as part of the budget process.
Right.
And I didn't know, I did not have a chance to talk to Mr. Marshall to find out if there was anything else they had done as far as looking within the county as to transferring a vehicle from someplace else. So it may be necessary, but I just did not have the time to talk to him about what options he had pursued.
And you amended, you changed it to as recommended?
So would it be without that one?
I would second that motion.
I'll just say I agree with somebody that, you know, buying equipment is something that probably should come through this board and part of a budget evaluation and capital plan. I agree with that.
Yep.
Motion second, no more discussion.
Again, to clarify, the motion is to accept these transfers as recommended. Carryovers, sorry, as recommended. Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Booth,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Cookenberg,
Yes.
and Mr. Sherman.
Yes.
All right, that has been approved as amended. Transfers, all right. Let's, Mr. Chair, would it be all right to take just another minute to go to 9B,
Yes, ma'am.
the FR 21 year-end transfers.
You'll see in your packet that some of the departments were overspent for the year, and there's a page that has an explanation of what caused those over expenditures. Fortunately, other departments had a surplus of money, so this is what we do every year, is where we move the authority you had granted to some departments to others to cover those over expenditures. And see if you have any questions. I wanted to point out one thing though. Every year, two departments go way over budget, and that's EMS and solid waste, largely because they can't control it. This year, EMS would not have gone over budget except for the ambulance, which was paid for out of fiscal year 21, but I had not had the chance to file for the reimbursement from the grant or the drawdown from the line of credit we had just, or the debt service. So if it hadn't been for that, EMS would have actually been under budget this year. I just wanted to point that out. I thought that was great. Solid waste is always way over budget, and I don't know what to say about it. It's, to a large degree, it's beyond anybody's control. At least to this point, it's a matter of how much trash we have and how much it costs to haul it and dispose of it.
Well, and this year we did find that 50% of overage of tipping, just from people cleaning out their houses.
Yeah.
And the increase in fuels, so I have 2 debts.
Yeah.
And some of the other items were EDA being over budget, but it was a project that you had approved. It's just we had not appropriated the money or transferred it from contingency at that time. And electoral board was over, but fortunately registrar could cover that one, so it was just a wash between registrar and electoral board. And the other large one's the county attorney. And again, we take a lot of issues to our county attorney and had a lot of things come up this year. But like I said, we did have enough authority in other places, so we'd ask for your approval of these transfers.
In Mr. Durbin's defense, he has earned it, that's for sure. He burnt the midnight oil a few times.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that but we still don't want to pay more.
You don't want to have those questions, you don't want to have those problems.
I'm thankful you're there. I move that we approve as presented.
Second.
Motion is second. No other discussion, call the roll.
And this is on your motion for final year-end transfers. So, Mr. Yoder?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Cookham?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
And Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Your final year expenditure transfers are approved. Oh, that's the end of
We got about a minute to give me a chance to read my handicap statement. It is the intent that all persons attending the meeting of the board, regardless of handicap and conditions, shall have an opportunity to participate. If any person present requires any special assistance, please let the board know in order that arrangements can be made. At this time, I'll open the floor for public comment. Limit your comments to 4 minutes. State your name and district you're from.
Good morning, I'm Bob Smith from Indian Valley. I just wanted to make sure that the record indicated that our great appreciation for the board and Mr. Coleman in particular getting us a very nice new site for our dumpsters. I have made it a point myself to pick stuff up there, and I hope that it will remain as clean and neat looking in 10 years as it is today. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? I'll declare the public comment period closed.
Mr. Chair, since Mr. Durbin is sitting here, I didn't ask him this, so he may not be prepared. But since 9C is related to legal matters, if it would be all right with you, Mr. Chair, that we move to that?
Thanks, Dr. Mosses. Ladies and gentlemen, you have before you a resolution to approve the Virginia Abatement Fund and Settlement Allocation Memorandum of Understanding. That's would be between the County of Floyd and the Commonwealth of Virginia, acting through the Attorney General's Office. Basically what this provides for is an allocation model for how the settlement funds from the opioid litigation will be used. without a memorandum of understanding, we all stand as claimants in bankruptcy for the Purdue and the Mallinckrodt matters, and as claimants in a civil action with regard to the other non-bankrupt defendants. Without some sort of framework for how those funds will be allocated, it puts us in a difficult position, which may ultimately require us to go to trial, put on our proof, and prove our level of damages. That course is likely to be costly for the defendants, and they would likely spend a lot of what is being offered in settlement on attorneys and expert witnesses and all the costs of litigation. So through a multi-year negotiation process with the county's outside opioid litigation counsel, this MOU has been reached and is recommended by the opioid litigation counsel. As a brief overview of how the funding would work, you would have 50, with regard to the Purdue bankruptcy, for example, you have the personal injury claimants, you have the federal claims, you have state claims, you have local claims. The MOU would help provide an allocation model of the distribution for the monies that is coming to Virginia. Virginia will get, I think, a little over 2% of the proceeds of the Purdue settlement, for example. And then of those funds that are coming to Virginia as a whole, that will be divided 55% to the Commonwealth opioid abatement entity, the authority. I think 15% to the Commonwealth, 15% directly to the localities, and then of the monies that are going to the opioid abatement authority, there is a priority allocation to go, again, another 15% directly to localities according to their allocated share. And then all localities would be eligible for going to the opioid abatement authority for additional funding of projects for abatement purposes. The way the authority will be structured, it will provide for a majority of representation to be appointed through local governments or joint entities that represent the interests of local governments, such as VACO or VML. So a little different than the Tobacco Commission situation. There's going to be more of a seat at the table for localities. It is our overall view of this. If you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to address it, but I will say that this is recommended by outside opioid litigation counsel.
Any questions?
I guess the only other thing I can say, we addressed in closed session what our impression of the funds coming to Floyd would be from the Purdue bankruptcy. The proposed settlement that's been announced with the big three and Johnson & Johnson is approximately 4.5 times that amount, so we would expect a factor of 4.5.
Yeah.
Good, I'll take a motion to approve the Virginia Abatement Fund settlement allocation.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, no discussion, call it up.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mr. Yerna?
Yes.
Ms. Kuchenberg?
Yes,
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman?
Yes.
All right, that's been approved.
This is one of the things that Steve's worked hard on, and we appreciate his diligence in it.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Yeah. I appreciate the amount of work. It's been a lot of work down the scenes by our attorneys and by outside counsel. So I appreciate the fact that, Steve, you've been able to work well with the other folks that have been involved in this.
Thank you. And I will say that the outside counsel, you have a few choices on which way to go. And the group that the board has chosen has kept me very well informed and regular conference calls and updates, and that's certainly very appreciated. Kind of keep tabs on how this process has been going.
yeah, there's a lot of things that sometimes we can't always disclose, and this has been one of them. This is a tragedy of immense proportion throughout the entire country, as well as here in Southwest Virginia, especially some of our more rural counties. But as Supervisor Coleman can attest, it has affected this region, our county, in ways that don't ordinarily show itself, but breaking and entering and all sorts of other ancillary problems that have developed off of the opioid crisis. And if there's any way that we can try to make it better for our counties that have managed to suffer from it, it was worth all our time and effort. And also, I'd like to thank you, and your guidance was invaluable, and I truly appreciate that. Thank you, Steve.
Lots of times, I shouldn't say this, but people get upset because we go into closed session so much, but this is a prime example of why we have to do it. Because when you talking to your attorney and he's negotiating something for you, it can't be discussed at work. And this is the epidemic. It really hasn't ended. It's still going. And we're still feeling the effects of it. Will for years to come. I'll shut up, go ahead.
Clark disappeared. Pretty much you now. Do you want to go ahead and start some of your stuff? Okay. You're finished? Okay. All right. I didn't know if you. That was informational. Okay. All right. Mr. Chair, since we don't see Mr. Clark yet, if you would like, we could basically move forward to the final things that you have, which is my report. And I'm actually going to add a couple of additional things to this list a little bit. The budget supplement for insurance reimbursement. I think that's something. And can I ask you to take that up?
Could we skip that for a little bit? I have a question that I have something I'd like to discuss with you probably if I could, before we do that.
Sure.
If that's okay.
Okay. Well then, if the Sheriff, I might. Moving on, information related to the U.S. Selective Services Board. As you recall, at some of your earlier meetings, we discussed that the federal government has decided to revive the Selective Services Boards, and that we have been contacted about having some representation. And some of you had shown some interest in the board meeting as serving yourselves, and I was asked to clarify about can elected officials serve in that role. And the answer to that was yes, and that the prohibition, though, is related to folks who are currently serving in military or law enforcement services. And so, since that was a public discussion, I wanted to bring that information back and get some guidance from you about where you would like to go as a board going forward on that issue.
For the record, I'm not presently in law enforcement. I've spent a number of years in law enforcement, so I withdrew my name from it. It probably didn't matter, but for save a lot of controversies.
Did you ever get clarification on exactly who appoints to the position? On the title was really clear on that. Do we make appointments or is it different?
We just present.
Do we make nominations to be appointed?
That letter of recommendation or something.
Okay, I never quite understood who actually decided in the end.
I'm not sure they're entirely clear, honestly. They said, I could appoint that, which I think would be inappropriate. You all could put names forward. You could appoint yourselves or go to the public and then we would forward those names. But to your point, it's not entirely clear, but there seems to be no reason they wouldn't necessarily be accepted if you all recommend it. That's kind of the answer I got back.
They just issue for candidates right now.
Are you still interested?
Well, I think I bring something unique to the table. Now, that doesn't mean I have to do it. I do think that there's probably not many people that have the perspective that I have. But, I've thought about it a lot over the last few weeks. There's probably a wide variety of types of people that get deferments. So, religious exemptions might be one, but other types would be, there's other medical and different things that might come up. So, I think a variety of people that with some background would be good.
And they have rules and guidelines.
That's right.
Whoever's in there has to follow.
That's right. I'd definitely be interested, but that's up to the board.
Would be appropriate. I'd make a motion that we draft a letter of recommendation for Mr. Yoder to serve and pass it on to the appropriate people.
I'll second that.
Motion is second, you'll cover roll.
All right. Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Kuchenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Yoder?
Abstain.
Okay. And Mr. Turner?
Yes. I guess the question I would have is, how do we find the second one? Do we advertise or?
Just ask for letters of
You sure you don't?
Hmm?
You sure you don't?
Well, I know they do a blowback if I get on there. And I just send it up to the county through it and I'll just withdraw my name.
Double check.
I'd love to do it.
I think you'd be good on it.
Hopefully, you never have to do it.
You never know, unfortunately.
I was gonna say, what about if we were to advertise, but also ask that the VFW reach out to its members and make them aware of the advertisement and ask them to encourage anybody interested to submit?
I never thought about that, but that'd be a great idea.
I like the idea of having an elected official and then somebody else. I think that's a good idea.
I think you should split it.
I do too. So,
Yeah.
The more I thought about the whole situation is, if, God forbid, we ever came to that again, that I would think you'd want a broad spectrum of people on the board, because there would be, on some hand, I could see a lot of cases where deferments would be a good thing, but you'd also want to be able to have folks there that can kind of identify when someone's trying to play the system too, so,
I think personally speaking, I prefer to see letters of interest from individuals outlining, describing what,
Yeah.
get a number of references indicating why they think that they're capable, qualities and traits, instead of just, applying or, think that this is one we probably want to have some good articulated facts about.
I concur with the letters of interest. That was one of the things I was gonna suggest, so yeah, I agree.
Yeah, a little background on why they would be able to serve.
Any history, just,
Yeah.
this could be a big deal.
It could be.
Yeah.
And it could be anything from someone that has military experience to someone that has medical experience, psychiatric experience. There's all kinds of things.
Or clergy.
The clergy, yeah. I mean, it could be a broad spectrum of people that would be qualified for it. It would be good to have that. Yeah, I would agree.
Medical especially, because there's a lot of people seek medical impairments and
It
stuff.
seems like, medical or religious things are probably the two higher ones.
Yep.
I'm sure, obviously there's a place and a time for both of those.
Because I know in my family's background, they had sent my grandfather off to the front lines. He was a pacifist. He wasn't going to shoot anybody. So, he truly the one way he could serve was working in the hospital. And he did, he served in the hospital, but he would have been absolutely useless and been another mouth to feed in a way if they'd sent him somewhere else. So, I think being able to pick and choose how you're going to make all that work, and it's really important.
Well, my dad, all three of my brothers was in combat, and my grandson just left Afghanistan. He's in Kuwait right now. Just can't see him around. I believe I could understand, maybe with a prejudice towards people that's trying to get a deferment, because I wanted to serve, I tried to enlist, but at that time I didn't know I had a heart defect, but it kept me out of the military, and my son wanted to serve, and thanks to an injury to him and from school, he couldn't serve, he tried to enlist, and so we feel like we missed out, but the Lord had other plans for us, I reckon, but anyway, I just think it'd be better if I was on the outside looking in.
That's part of the beauty of the United States, is you get a lot of different people in a lot of different situations. You make it all work.
All right, so we will move on with going ahead and drafting a letter to the selective service folks, and Mr. Yoder will serve in advertising and specifically reaching out to the DFW, and in that asking folks to articulate their related background and why they feel they're best to serve. Moving on to the next item on my list, if I'm not mistaken, is update on trails. As you know, we had someone come and comment during the last public comment period about the Partnership for Floyd's desire to have the county maintain the trails. And so since that time, we've been able to unearth some old agreements. The one originally between the authority and the Partnership for Floyd related to the Dobbs Trail out at the county park. And also one between the EDA and the Partnership for Floyd related to the Pioneer Trail out at the Commerce Center. While they were slightly different, both documents suggested that maintenance would be the responsibility of the Partnership for Floyd for a period of 2 years. And those 2-year periods have expired in both of those cases. So that's why they were here asking. And it's the language in those documents essentially says after the 2 years, we're all going to work together in partnership and figure out how to do this in better legal terms. More like something senior.
Well, done.
Yeah. So we did, myself, Ladina, and Jacob met with representatives from the partnership for Floyd, and discussed what the future potentially would be for those trails. We focused primarily on the Dobbs Trail because that one is completed and being used, where the Pioneer Trail is currently not complete and therefore not open to the public. But recognize that the EDA will need to start taking that conversation up. So we're exploring how much we might have to potentially expend and put in, ask you all to consider putting in the budget for next year. The partnership was going to go back and talk to their membership about, apparently at one time there was an account that they put a little bit of money in, that if there was some kind of major thing, a tree was drowned down on the trail or something, that funding could be used for that. So they were going to go back to their membership and ask about replenishing that. And then we were going to look at what the cost would be to maybe do one mow the summer of the Dobbs Trail, given that it's so dry and so late. But really the thought is for what are we going to do going forward. So that's, yes, sir?
That would definitely just be the Dog Creek.
Yes, at this point, that's where our focus is.
In Commerce Park, just that one.
Right, yes, because of the different ownership, to Mr. Booth's point. Where we will have some joint conversation is, as you can imagine, as in the past, questions surfaced about insurance and liability. And so we're going to do a call on the 23rd with Bay Corp to kind of talk about all of our risk associated with the park. And then I think Ladina will potentially have some questions to ask on behalf of the EDA related to the other trail, but kind of get their thoughts about, they said essentially they would offer advice about how we could potentially mitigate, but they've already said signs and the risk forms, release of liability forms for volunteers are probably the 1 and 2 going forward. So we'll move forward on that. And then the last item on the trails update is there is a Department of Forestry grant that's open. It closes the 20th. And it's for urban and community forest. And it turns out we qualify as an urban or community forest area. And so this is something that I've applied for in a previous role in a slightly more urban environment, I will say. But one of the areas that they would potentially fund would be an outdoor classroom. So a couple of us are going to work on it. It's not a very substantial lift for the grant itself, or the application itself. And so that would potentially, what we would write up is to put an outdoor classroom on the Dobbs Trail. And that would also, hopefully, in addition to providing a great outdoor classroom facility and programming, we're going to already kind of have commitment from Extension and 4-H and the library to support us on this. The Master Gardeners, we're going to meet and see what they could do, but I think they'll probably sign on. But in that process, if that all happens, it would also increase the foot traffic on the trail, which of course is the best way to maintain a trail, is to have people walk it. So that's kind of where we are on that issue right now. So I will try to get that drafted up and out here before the 20th.
Is there a match?
There is a 50% match requirement, which can be a soft match.
Good, so all of that, what you just described, could be.
Yes, so all of our time, Jacob's time, the partnership for Floyd volunteers, that time's valued at around $25 a person. And the library and I believe the extension folks could help us a lot on having programming available. So it's not just a classroom, but it comes with a lot of things. And we've talked to the partnership. As you know, Jane and some of the other folks are very good at doing a lot of botany training. And so we could potentially utilize her expertise to make the training around nature issues. And we've been talking about including some QR, since the service up there is pretty good, actually. Having some QR code places where there might be a little write-up, but then you could scan in a QR code and go to a more extensive thing. And that could be utilized, of course, by adults and children in the school systems, but also those who are homeschooled or going to some of the private schools we have. So it's a way to help out the larger community. If it gets funded. If not, we'll write it up and still look for another source. So, and then I'll stop since I think we've got our that's right.
When they get to maintaining the trails, I got a piece of advice for them. When I was in high school, the neighborhood youth corps got me another high schooler a job in Parkway during the summer. One of the things was maintaining the trails. It cut knee limbs that would hit anybody in the head. So you know how high schoolers are. They can only reach so high. New district ranger shows up. He's 6'4", 6'5". By the time he puts his smoky bear hat on, we was back cleaning trails. So get a tall person to do that.
So you're saying that's not part of my
No, that's not what we do.
You like my daughter, you vertically challenged. Mr. Clark? I was worried about you.
Get caught in some traffic?
I did, actually.
You got work areas?
That wasn't the reason. I was gonna be late anyway. I think I sent, did you see my email? I sent Cindy an email saying,
I just thought maybe you were in the.
but I didn't send it till I was,
I've always said I'm gonna be like Liz Taylor, I'm gonna be 15 minutes late for my own funeral.
I thought you asked my hand breaker. Okay. Maintenance updates is, we finished off the fiscal year at the end of June, so July's been, it's been catching back up on some of the stuff that sort of budget reasons cut back on. So a lot more patching in July than we did in June. I haven't been through, but our reports from the Czech area headquarters said that they did do some pothole patching on Bethlehem Church and Huckleberry Ridge, as well as Stonewall and on 221. Spent a lot of time, of course, on gravel roads, and dust has been an issue because of the weather. We received a lot of calls asking for dust control. We also got a nice call from someone that said we did a good job on Lake Ridge, so that's not, I don't know if I did the whole thing or not, but at least the upper end. Right. So yeah, we haven't hit them. We're going to hit them soon, and like I said, some of those things they've sent. We did done Sowers Road and Hope Road, Hummingbird, Thomas Farm, as well as some others. The Willis doesn't tend to give me the actual route names that they've done, although they did do a pipe repair on Springdale Road, and they've done some mow trim brush cutting on 221 and Hilton Hollow Road. We also spoke to a citizen on Hilton about some of the issues on Hilton. I think they did take care of those. The screen called and let us know that we can do some work out there, as well as doing some laying of asphalt on Sumter Road and on Rocky Hill. I have not been out there. I was gone most of the month of July, as a matter of fact, but I think Roger Road is done. I plan on checking that out as when I leave here, so that's a good thing. And the four-way stop at Shooting Creek and Franklin Pike has been approved, I believe, and so there'll have to be a lot of advance, publicity and message board, that kind of thing goes up, but that is something that they've looked at and agreed to.
Excellent.
While I'm going on, and mentioned Roger Road, I'm just going to throw this out right now. It's something that we're going to have to probably work on. We've been running into issues, and it's no one's fault really. We put roads on the 6-year plan. They're on the plan until they get up to the point at which we're getting ready to work on them. We ask for a resolution from the board, allowing us to do it under our rural rustic guidelines, which all of the unpaved roads pretty much fall under qualification for rural rustic guidelines, which allows us to, it's just a design standard that allows us to do it with less than like 4-foot shoulders and 45-mile-an-hour design speed. cost prohibitive to pay unpaved roads to some of our old design standards. So we came up with this new design standard, which is actually a federal standard. We just adopted it in the state of Virginia, and the federal guidelines say it's for roads with less than 400 vehicles a day. But we don't have any gravel roads. I don't know if anywhere in the Salem district with 400, but most of ours are 200 at best. So we're well within these standards, but with these rural rustic standards, we still try to get a certain width. We try to get 16 feet. We try to get a foot of shoulder. Sometimes that requires donated right-of-way. Not unusual. What we're running into is as roads are put on the 6-year plan, they move up to about to be built. We go out and we start talking to property owners. And recently have been running into some issues with property owners who don't want to donate, who may not even want the road paved at all. And the problem that's creating for us at BDOT is that once it gets to that point where we have a rural rustic resolution, we put we call it a UPC, just like you have in like a grocery store for scan something, but it gets a number and it starts being tracked. At that point, it becomes a project within our system, and we have internal goals to meet as far as projects go. So it gets on a schedule, and at that point, we really don't like dropping projects. And sometimes they may have to be, because at that point, that's the point that we're finding out that we may have issues with right-of-way, or with residents who may not want it. So what I want to ask the board to work with me with is identifying some of those before they become projects in our tracking system. Identify those beforehand, figure them out. It may not be something that we want to pursue. It may have gotten on the 6-year plan because of somebody wanted it a long time ago, but by the time it gets there, they don't want it much anymore. So we have two choices when it does become that. We can drop the project because we can't get right away. We can just build it. VDOT has a 30-foot prescriptive easement to maintain a road. We can build it within that 30 feet, whether the property owners want us to or not. That's not necessarily the way we want to go. I don't know if that's the way the board wants to go. It may be the way that we want to go. Different roads serve different needs. You might have a through road where you say, yeah, if you can't get the right of way, just go ahead and build it on what you got. If it's a dead end road and you don't have a lot of through traffic and it's just serving the residents and they really don't want it, that's, there's plenty of other roads that people do want. So, nothing that the board has to decide on now or anything, but I'm just letting you know that we're going to be going through what's on the 6-year plan and just trying to make sure before it gets to the point where I'm asking for a rural rustic resolution. That's the point that we've already spent, and that's the other thing. We're spending money in design, preliminary design, and charging to these projects, and then to drop it, you've wasted $50,000 maybe in design. $20,000 to $50,000, something like that, which nobody wants to do because that's money that can be put on another project. So just throwing that out there for right now. We'll talk about it. We'll look at some of the roads. We just want to make sure, A, that we're doing the roads that people want done. If they don't want them, we have no reason to want to push a road through, unless it gets to that point where it's now part of our tracking process and we've made a commitment to deliver projects, and as a project we want to deliver it. And it just may be something where if we can't, for instance, we're looking at Firehouse right now, and we've got a couple residents that have been resistant to donate, whether it's loss of trees, property, whatever it may be. We can continue, obviously, like I said, with just doing it within 30 foot. We can shift it to one side or another. We're working through it, and it's a minority of the residents. That's one where you may want to go through with the project because it is, if it does go through, and that may be a good one for the whole network. So we're looking at a couple things like that, and I'll work with the board in general and maybe individual board members on the road that may be in your particular district on helping us do some of that advanced work with the property owners.
Well, of course, this is going way back prior to Floyd County being in with the Christiansburg division. We were running into those same kind of problems, and at that time, I don't know if this was just in Hillsborough or if it was statewide, adjustments were made where you had, or at least here, as a backstory, a lady had called me and they were putting survey stakes in her yard. Nobody had approached her. Nobody had said anything about this road improvement. And I mean, they were that far off her front porch. And after that fiasco, the highway engineers and the one after that tended to, a road was suggested, and I know you have to have so much preliminary expense to have some idea of what you're going to do.
Right.
But at some point before too much of the funding was tied up in the design, they started approaching people on the road earlier in the process, which sounds like much earlier than we are now. And if they ran into someone that said no, then they came back to the board, usually gave that supervisor in whatever district it was a little time, a meeting or two to go out and talk to the people, see if there was any swaying. If there wasn't, then it was struck then, before you had too much expense in it. Is there any way we can jump this process back around like that to where we're kind of approaching people ahead of time before too much expense is in it? That made sense then, and it was what started happening, and it kind of makes sense. Of course, I know you've got a bigger district and everything else, but it would make sense for the VDOT reps if we've got roads on the 6-year road plan, they've been there. Even if it's one we just added this year, it would make sense then from my standpoint, one of the first things is, all right, we're looking at upgrading this road. At minimum, we're probably going to be doing this, just a brief outline, then approach property owner and say, all right, in this area, we know we're going to need another 5 foot of right of way. Well, that's a problem. Let's approach that property owner and see before you get into you turn the drafters loose and they're.
Yes, we can do that. We can do a quick ride through, basically, and know very, very roughly where we might need some.
Right.
And that would not be in the 20 to 50,000 range. We'd be, we could.
I mean, that's just before for us.
Yes, and it will now. And that's, we've thought of that. And that was going to be part of the plan. As I said, that we would probably go to the board to help us with a very, very rough idea and get an idea of the properties where we might want.
And also of course, even though the people give you a verbal at that time, it's not going to be an actual written commitment because until you know exactly what's going to happen. But in the tail end of the process, there are options. They're not great options, but there are options. Once I lived through it once you have so much funding tied up in the project, you can't just walk away from it. So that's why I'm suggesting that we find out way ahead of time before we get to that last resort. And also, unless something's changed, the rural rustic was actually started based on what we're talking about, roads that you couldn't get additional right-of-ways. And, basically it was, you get your grading, stabilization, and ditching, and basically it's the road that's in place, and it's never upgraded above that standard. Once it went into that program, or that's how it was when it started.
Right, yeah, we don't peg out major curves or anything like that. We leave the alignment the same. We just widen some of the most narrow spots.
Okay.
And drainage really is one of our big.
Right, that's the big problem.
Yeah, and so that's what that's the intent of the rural rustic program, not a major realignment.
And once it's in rural rustic, it stays that way, or that's how it used to be. In other words, you couldn't come back, have somebody come back 10 years later and say, all right, we want to upgrade this secondary road.
No, because what happens, that gets to a funding issue, because most of your funding is earmarked for unpaved roads. Once you build it, then it's no longer an unpaved road, and it's ineligible for that kind of funding.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to, I felt like everybody needed a little refresher, but the main point I wanted to make was to get to property owners earlier in the process, that had worked years ago.
And what we've done before is before we had the rural rustic standard that we used, we would go out, and if we didn't have agreement from a property owner for the right of way, we've gone before and just stopped work at this property, picked it up.
On the other side, I've got
And that's why we have a couple of those.
Yeah, and all of us might.
Yeah.
It's a speed reduction.
Yeah, it's a tactic.
Yeah, it's traffic calming.
Yeah.
And instead of putting the bumps in the road, you just got.
Yeah.
Well, if you
So you can get right away, we can do that still, because we could just
So that's the
work within the 30,
explanation
don't
for
go any further than 15 feet from the center, if we're having issues with property owners, but, we don't want to create any ill.
But
So,
I've had one or two of those through the years that ended up that way, and some other supervisors did too, that eventually you went back and finished.
yeah.
Yeah.
They changed their mind, yeah.
We're not gonna name one of them, but we've spent a lot of time talking about it.
Well, I got one in Johnson County, I got one in Montgomery County too. Definitely. So anyway, that's something to just let you know, we'll be working with y'all on, and hopefully all the roads that are in the plan right now will find a way through and get them done. So,
Yep.
anyway, that's all I have as far as updates from us. We are working on the road naming sign. I think the one for Forestry might be in, so I'll have to double check, and I'll let you know so we can do a proper thing with the sign. And I just got the one for Route 8, and that will go through your precinct too.
Great, thank you. I'll mark that off my list.
All right, I'll just start with Justin and go around the
Sounds
table.
good.
At some point, show the record to chair and turn the chair over to the vice chair, please.
I don't have much, Mr. Clark, thanks for the update. I did notice over the weekend, where White Rock had recently been paved, they did an outstanding job, but at the intersection near Copper Valley Road, utility contractors that were working in there, I know this happens when they put their outrigging equipment down on a hot day, sometimes it'll commonly kind of mar a little bit, but this is beyond marring. And now we have freshly paved asphalt that has very nice
Footprints in it?
gouges in it. I mean, gouges, like
Wow.
a couple places look like they left that little blade on the front of their excavator down and just drove. And this is less than a month old fresh asphalt. And it's the same utility contractor. And I also noticed that it's not only that intersection, but as you go up Indian Valley Road towards Montgomery County line, they're doing the same thing. Now we got this nice fresh asphalt there on White Rock that this winter, when precipitation gets in there and freezes, this stuff's gonna be busted up. So I don't know if you guys have a compliance person that goes out.
Yeah, they're supposed to, they can't be a lot of places, but I'll make them look at that.
If you,
And part of their permit says that they aren't to do that or have to fix it.
and I'm sure that it's probably maybe a little bit embellished because I was happy with that new asphalt and I seen a little street in it. So there's a human element. You can let them know that, hey, if they call back and say that supervisor's crazy, it could be so. Nonetheless, come on. Yeah, that was brand new.
Oh, yeah.
It didn't even got the lines on. So if you can have somebody check that out, I would appreciate it. The other thing, I just wanted to make sure I was correct. I believe one time before you told us on these asphalt projects that they will come in and line those in a group. Is that correct? So,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, just being when they're here, they'll probably hit 221 White Rock and a couple of the other roads.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what makes sense.
It's part of the contract with the paving company is to pave it and put the markings on. But the paving company is the prime contractor. They sub out the line painting. So they're supposed to have a certain number of days, maximum they can go without lines. So they're supposed to be getting that before it, but it usually goes longer.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's all I had. And just if you could, maybe have someone check on that. Those spots on White Rock, I appreciate it.
Turn it back over to you. Now, let's start with me.
We just keep on going.
Go with me, all right. Talking about these side crews and stuff, on Route 8, as soon as they get done, if we could do some shoulder work and those guardrails attention that we've talked about for several years going as an MA deal, if that could happen, it would be good. The crews worked on half of Gallimore Lane. If you're going down, they worked on the left-hand side. I think you still have a little bit more to do at the end. Thank goodness, I'm not gonna thank goodness we need the rain, but we hadn't had to wash out rains. I think at the end of it on the left-hand side going down at the very end, there's still a little work there that needs to be done so the water runs in the culvert and not in the person's driveway. And hopefully sometime or other they'll be able to give attention to the right-hand side of that road going down through there. I know y'all are covered up and just when you can get back to it, if you can get to it before the rainy season. Have you heard anything on the safety money we could use for crosswalk yet?
I'll check the balance. I think that has been allocated to us. I think it's in our account. I'll check the balance.
Okay, if we could get that one scheduled, if it is.
Yeah.
Just know when, that way you could pass that on. Last time you had mentioned something about instead of doing away with the parking at Milestones, you had an idea to do something there. I've noticed that, especially on Fridays, they have made their own handmade signs, trying to keep people that's coming to the Friday Night Jamboree from just parking there where people can't pick up their children. So you said you had an idea on that? And
yeah, I haven't spoken to them about it yet, but we don't want to, we'd like to let it, I haven't figured out the right sign because I don't want to prohibit all parking at all times because sometimes, they do some pick up and drop off, especially on the side where it is. And they're not there for more than 5 minutes. Right. So
it's a long-term parking.
Right, that's what we're trying
to do. And the people that park there long-term, that block that where you can't see.
Yeah. I'll see what the appropriate sign. It may just be something like you have in front of us, loading and unloading on.
Yeah, something like that would be good if you could. Also, I was cleaning out my fence row and stuff over on Woods Gap next to the school, or Baker intersection, you go to the parkway. At some point in time, somebody took and there was a 4x4 post there with a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit sign on it. And sometime or other, somebody just cut the top of the post off and took sign and all.
Well, isn't that?
Yeah, they didn't take the time to unbolt it, they just cut it off and took sign. So I guess we need to take that wooden post out, maybe put a metal post or something and maybe replace that sign just so that people.
In the corner, some college kids.
And I apologize, my tree was out in front of it, but I did take care of it, so that's how I found the sign.
So it's 25 on Woods Gap or on Baker?
It's on Woods Gap. When you come on Baker, like you're going up to the high school,
yeah,
you turn right, like you're going toward the parkway.
Yeah,
it's about 50 yards up the road or something.
Okay.
That's right off.
Yeah, just whack it off and let. Also, speaking of school, did you get a chance to check on anything as far as that drainage and how it's going to affect there? I know you said you were gone.
Yes, no, I did. The guy that handling our permits for us is it's part, the overall ultimate drainage has been looked at and it's supposed to be working fine. And it was just some kind of blowout during construction, which often happens before they get seeding done and,
Well, it's just where they got that outflow from the retention ponds. And I don't know, luckily, again, I'm not gonna say luckily, I almost did. We need the rain bad, but, you know, it was obvious during some of that harder rain that it was coming out of it into the road.
Yeah, in June.
About that.
That's
Yeah.
where it
In June,
doesn't
it was
appear
bad.
to be a pipe under the road there, so.
It's sagged.
Yeah, right in that deal. So my point is, there has to be something, you know, if that's gonna be something that happens in big rain events, then there's gonna have to be something done under that road. Backwards or drain it or something.
I would assume DEQ is involved in that.
yes, yeah, because they probably have to have a permit and then, yeah.
I mean, along with you guys.
And I guess the school checked with y'all when they shut down the through traffic on that road.
I don't know if they did or not.
Okay. I was just surprised at that when I saw it, but there is no through traffic on, you know, from the high school to the elementary.
They took the barricades down yesterday.
Oh, they did?
The fence is going, the barricades.
So it is.
I'm not saying you can drive through, I'm just saying that the fence is
It's
going,
on
the
the
barricades are going.
Okay.
Those roads are a little bit kind of like, we maintain roads on Virginia Tech as well, but they're really, it's not beat up right away. They just give them a number so that VDOT will overlay it.
But these are.
Well, these are VDOT
These
roads
are
because we've been
VDOT
asked to abandon them.
They're, yes, but it's not right away. It's VDOT maintained
Road.
roads. We don't treat them the same way we might treat Franklin Pike, as far as VDOT imposing whatever will we want on it. They're internal school roads.
Okay. Well, I was just curious,
Yeah.
because I went up there and I saw that and I said, oh, okay.
Now we had, I was often wondering why some of them had different numbers and stuff.
Yeah, it's nice, and usually it's like a 9,000 number.
Okay. Well, thank you and thank the crews. I know they've been out working like crazy and, just keep doing the best you can. That's all you can do. So. That's enough for today for me.
So, thank you on Roger Road. Obviously, I had gone down and talked with the crews and kind of been, sort of looking at things as they went on. Just yesterday, some work was being done on Franklin Pike. It actually looked like ditching, but then it looks like shoulder work, but then it looks like ditching and shoulder work. Obviously, it's probably for drainage, I would assume, but it's right past Sam's Road in that curve. I just was wondering what was going on. There were a lot of trucks and a big grader, and I don't know, it just looks interesting. Just, you know, somebody, I could have called Darryl, but I knew you were coming, so. Also,
He
thank
mentioned it to
you.
me this morning, I can't remember what he said.
Who?
I spoke to him this morning on the
Oh.
phone about it, and he said, I can't remember exactly what he said. I think it's probably just some shoulder work.
Yeah, okay. It looks great. I mean, they really did a lot of work. Spent most of the day on it. And yes, thank you for the four-way stop. I think that's gonna help to, I think it will save a life. I have no doubt, because it's gotten, pretty industrial right in there, and, people sometimes fly, from 221 down Shooting Creek, so hopefully, if there's anything I can do in terms of your advertising and talking to people, please reach out. I'll be more than happy to help in that respect. Thank you. This is mainly thank yous. Thank you for Bethlehem Church. Thank you for Huckleberry Ridge. Red Oak Grove is still a bit of a problem. If you could look on that one, it's it really needs to be paved. I mean, in space, you know, we can patch all we want, but I mean, that one is, yeah, it is going to pieces. That's yeah, it's, no. So if you could look at Red Oak Grove, that'd be great. I think that's about it. I know they paved Bethlehem Church, but I don't know that the problem is gonna be solved, so we'll just have to watch and see, you know.
Yeah, if it continues to sink, yeah.
Yeah, if it continues to sink, we know we have more of a problem than just that. And then in Justin's district on White Oak Grove, I know you've got markers on it, but it's starting to sink even worse on, just as you head to Carriage. I came that way this morning, so just look at that.
I just went through there.
Huh?
I just went through there.
Yeah, on White Oak Grove, it's just that one area where the road is starting to sink right before you get to Carriage, a little bit before you get to Carriage. It's on the right-hand side as you're going towards Carriage. And I think that's it. I can't, unless you remember anything from my district. You got anything other than White Oak Grove? Okay, but, there was something, Jerry and Joe, this is both of your districts, the paving on Route 8 towards the Parkway, just outstanding. I myself find the new center line very intriguing. I know it's going to save lives big time, especially when people fall asleep or are not paying attention. Or foggy, or distracted. There's a whole bunch of things. I did get a call. I don't know. Either one of you could have gotten it too. But, you know, that it's loud.
Yeah.
But, and I point. I know. I get that. I'm just saying. Anyway, I
Well, it's not people driving it, it's the neighborhood, some of the
yeah,
neighbors
some of the
are,
neighbors
that
that
it's so loud that when they hit it, it actually
it wakes them up.
up.
Yeah, that's what I
It
heard.
shows you how often though people cross the.
Well, and that is, what is amazing is I went ahead and just stopped one day and sort of kind of got myself out of the way, and it is amazing how many people just don't pay attention and just go into that median, you know, the center line. So thank you for doing that. I complimented the guys doing the actual job, the line painting crew. And I know you must have studies that show how many lives that saves. So I am very sorry to the folks that it is causing so much consternation, waking them up and such, but maybe people will get used to it and understand that they have to stay in their lane.
Is there gonna be a new standard, especially in maybe some of the foggier areas of the county?
It can be done, and if we suggest it, it's not something that's done automatically every time it's.
221 got it, right? 221 got it down by, they said they were going to 221 next when I stopped to speak to them.
I don't know if that's necessarily going to be standard on all 2 lane primaries.
Not on Little Mountain, where they paved all of that? That didn't get
I
done?
didn't pay for it. I stopped at foot.
Oh.
Nothing yet, but it hasn't been lined out there, so
Okay.
maybe it can.
I don't know, that's where they said they were going next, so I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's up to everybody that has it, but for my part here in my district, if we're repaving and it is a foggy problem area, I know it's additional cost, but I would request that.
I know this foggy food with C.W. Arms down Westport.
Absolutely.
It worked good down there.
I thought that's where they were going with it.
They probably are, just ain't got there yet.
Yeah, you got real foggy area.
It's always foggy down there.
Yeah, I bet it is.
Yeah, when it's sunny here, it'd be foggy down there.
We've had ice storms, come off snowball, come down the hill, and it all disappear. And we'd be sitting up there thinking the whole world was going in. People now just acting like normal life.
Yeah, that whole ridge right there.
Couple thank yous. I've talked to several people on Deer Run. I can't even think all of them now, but anyway, some of the pothole repairs, patching. The patching on Deer Run's really, really good. Those folks are kind of, the ones I've talked to have been really pleasantly surprised because it's the smoothest patches they've seen in a generation. They can actually, they can actually drive pretty well across. Instead of just using a grader, they had a roller there too, so they really did a good job on some of the big patches, so.
Is that our crews?
Yeah, it's actually a check crew there.
I guess I didn't go through all of them. You're on some of this new area they did, Wilson Cemetery, Douglas Holland.
I've got several calls. I received a few thank you calls this week, which I had nothing to do with it, but I want to pass that along. I had someone call me from Lick Ridge that was quite upset. But it sounds like maybe y'all went down there and worked on that.
Yeah.
I did talk to a couple people, when it drops off the mountain down into Montgomery County, several years ago, you brought in some type of machine that broke up some of the big rocks that are like humps in the road. I think there's a couple places that might be coming back again. And I talked to one gentleman that actually lived in Montgomery County, but owns lands on top of the mountain and travels it every day. He said it had gotten bad enough that he couldn't take his car, he could only take his truck up and down it because it was bottoming out and scraping. So I haven't had a chance to ride down through there, but he was wondering about that. And then I've had a couple people lived up here that mentioned it to me as well. I had a call from a lady that lives out on the other side of the parkway on Franklin Pike. And she was worried. I haven't went out there and checked this either, I've just been so busy, but she said the lines aren't very good out there, and when it's dark and foggy, they can't see. And part of her concern was the possibility of maybe increased traffic to campers and that type of thing coming off the parkway to maybe going to Chantilly. And she was really hoping that we could at least get some fresh lines on Franklin Pike out toward the parkway, that end of the Franklin Pike. But she was very complimentary on some of the patchwork done, so she was another really nice conversation. It was one of those where somebody calls with an ask, but was super nice about it. And then I had one question on a road off of 221. Do y'all sometimes have safety money or something? It's a intersection of 221 that a bank maybe could be cut back some. There's a power line there, but I've had some people asking me about where you turn out on 221. It's kind of hard to see.
Okay, which intersection?
It's Jackson Hill and 221 there. And the bank is back toward Floyd on the south side. But it's a pretty high bank there, and there's been a couple close calls there and a couple wrecks there, and I'm not sure, they weren't sure if the wrecks were caused by someone pulling out, but there was some concern there that people live right in the area.
Yeah, we can do that. We've done several around the county on some secondary, did my Coles Knob years ago.
Yes.
Maybe something to just think about, and I know that, I'd say the guys there are familiar with it, that intersection. But, I didn't know if there would be a possibility sometimes somebody looking at that and just see it. It's, there's a power line right there on the road, but there's been a log truck wreck right in that, almost in that intersection, and another accident right there where someone ran off the road. And there's several people that have talked to me about just, you have to pull out so far, almost in the road, that I think the oncoming traffic thinks you're going to pull out from the bill because you're out here straining trying to see it. So there's, I want to ask about that. That's all okay. Oh, and, sorry. On Pond Road,
I was just about to say.
if you need any help on getting
Yeah, we're gonna do, yeah, we'll
please call me. I'll be glad to ride down there with you.
Yeah, that's all right. I'm still planning on doing that.
Okay.
You can act like Columbo down here.
I always brought that up earlier. I thought it was easier to explain.
270s today. 40s and telephone.
They opened our bridge, thankfully, but I always get a call from him that, yeah, I complain about how rough it is. And on the north side coming down, it's sort of humpy. And I sort of understand him trying to match the pavement up and big trucks running over it too before it gets settled in. But you look at that and just see what you think about it. And, I dropped the ball this morning. I got a petition from the people in Dehart Store Road. It comes off of Shimmer over the Parkway. It's probably about a mile through there maybe. I don't know if it's quite that far or not. They was worried about the rural rustic road. So, you know, but, I'll drop that petition off and I'll have them fax it to you.
Okay.
And then I'll get the board members their copies next meeting.
All right.
And, over on Buffalo Mountain Road, that hole keeps popping through that culvert over, over about a mile and a half off 221. As Chucky would say on that movie, you know, I'm back.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that culvert's disintegrating or what. But y'all do a great job patching it, but then a couple months later, it's just goes on through. And again, Mr. Coleman has got a complaint on Reese Road as you turn off 221. I mentioned Sheriff Craig is one. They're complaining about people when they turn off 221. They speed up that hill. And there's some really small children that live on both sides. You know, I don't know what you could do. I really don't. The only concern I've got now is school walking. When the school bus stops there, if somebody turns off that quick, you know, I told you, and that was one of those situations where you have to have an officer there 24/7 to catch them, and people don't read signs. And, which brings me to the next one, is Fairview Church Road. You know, you called me again the other day, had a big truck stuck in front of her house. They turn to go up to the winery. You know, they still ain't figured out GPS or eyes to them on that road.
You got it on the other end.
And when they make that turn, then there they are. And,
Okay.
I told her, I said, you know, they don't even read the sign on 221 without Indian Valley,
Yeah.
you know. They still go down that road. So,
At least it's there.
sorry.
I said, at least it's there.
Yeah. But, you know, I told her maybe y'all could put, I don't know if they have on Route 8 or not, I haven't checked yet. Say this not recommended for truck traffic. And, maybe if you put in a big old circle with a slash mark through it, you pay more attention to it. But, I don't know what the answers are going to be there, other than just building a new road up there.
Yeah.
We can't handle that because it goes on the parkway side. So,
Oh, that's right, yeah.
you know, because once they start up that ridge, it's over on the parkway.
Oh, yeah, the land is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, some of the roads, and I know y'all doing the best you can on this, you know, talking about all the dust goes up on. And,
We're trying to hit the
Yeah.
dusty ones this week in particular.
you know,
Some last week too.
yeah, in that little section of road that goes from, Firehouse over to, Maryfield, I forgot the name of it, Keith Lane or Keith Drive or whatever. You know, they didn't want that little bridge down there repaired. Especially when the water gets up. And emergency equipment can't get through there unless they go completely around Maryfield. And, you know, they was wondering where that was at, if it was on your radar or whatever.
So low water?
Yes, low water
Yeah.
bridge. It's where the salvage trucks and all come through, they just broke it all up. But that culvert, Tony Weddle told me, he said it's been there as long as he's been here. So, me and he was the same age, so it's been a while.
Been a while.
And, you know, it's just getting broke up.
Yeah.
It's sort of dangerous, really.
We repaired a couple of those recently, so we'll get that one for repair. Not much we can do about raising it or anything.
Right.
It's gonna be covered in hot water.
I'm not telling you how to do it, but I think if you did like you did going above my house,
Mhm.
put a extra culvert in there, and
Yeah, that might,
and that will take care of the water problem when it comes down through there. And then just, build it up with that crushed asphalt. Gonna take care of that problem, but I appreciate everything y'all do with limited staff here. So,
roll it again.
yeah, and, the rough weather ain't got here yet.
Yeah, we're trying to get as much done with it and get better here as we can.
But we do appreciate everything y'all do. And, Columbo's got one more thing.
But this does affect all of us. Years ago, I know they had work release at New River Valley Jail, and VDOT did, occasionally get crews out and go around. I've had two in particular complaints on roads that's not we share, and I'm sure you will know which ones they are, of so much trash along the road, just citizens picking up a half a bag out of their portion alone. Now that the COVID's somewhat over and whatever, I was thinking maybe if VDOT and New River could get together and maybe work something out, maybe we could get some of those crews back. I know they are in other counties, but those counties have their own jails.
Right.
But maybe we could get something like that going again. That's something all our districts.
Yes, that would be helpful.
And see, maybe work something out along those lines. And there may be somebody with your department already looking into it, but, I just felt like I needed to bring that up to her, and I'm sorry I just mentioned it to you ahead of time since you sat on that board, but, it would help out here tremendously, especially with a lot of the trash along the roads. And I know that they have people that they're chomping at the bit to get out of that building if they can.
Oh, yeah, that's the wrong ones.
Well, I know that, yeah. But,
Let's say it.
I'll pass the buck to Dr. Millsap on that, because, we was sort of talking about that the last meeting. And right now, we're limited on the ones that we naturally call a trustee.
Right.
And, they suggested, or the superintendent suggested, being that I don't think they have it 8 that they can release like that. That maybe the county administrators and the boards wants to get together with other counties and set up a schedule. Like they could work Floyd Monday or Tuesday, and then Giles, whatever, and move them around like that. And that would sort of help them out too.
Sure.
As far as their schedule. The ones that work the road, they're the ones that has to have a guard with them, so it's sort of short-staffed right now too. I think we're down about 70 officers.
Yeah.
And, at least,
not 70.
yeah, and it's just not us, it's statewide, a little bit more, and they'll have to lock the jail down.
It sounds like it's a lot to work out, but I wasn't trying
Yeah,
to step
no,
into
I
your
understand that, I just
territory.
wanna, pass the buck to Ms. Millsap. Maybe she could, contact Super or whatever and find out the logistics on that.
But I just thought it helps everybody.
Yeah, man, we've done quite a lot, kind of got out of the practice of it here the last few years.
I have one question.
I'm contagious today.
Reference to Chairman Turner's comment about Restrooms. Is there a way on some of these dirt roads for speeding these issues? I know that I've had them on showers and damn complaints and things. Is there a way you guys could be creative and cut a water bar across the road?
We usually don't put those in purposely.
Well, I mean, especially on some of those mill dams, there's a lot of places that water needs to be drained. I mean, I'm just saying,
You could have an accident.
is that not advisable? Maybe you could look at those roads.
Like an open trench kind of,
Yeah.
the inverse speed bump kind of
Absolutely.
thing. Yeah.
Just accidentally drop a blade and pick it up.
It's, it drains the water and kids' attention at the same time.
You can put a sign. That's wrong. You can just put, because a lot of the, towns that maintain the roads, they will put in.
It's safe for everybody, especially with.
But they put a sign there, it says bump.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to that idea. Roads in our district.
I had to work a case over on a certain road that Jerry would know about, but he wasn't involved, but every Saturday morning, guys always complained about people driving fast in front of his house. And they called one Saturday morning just after I was working, and he had his tractor and post hogger out there. And he was drilling holes in the road.
I know what you're talking about.
So, yeah, he wasn't too happy when I told him he had to fill him back in, and I think we ended up having to charge him. So, yeah.
Well, something similar happened this week.
Yeah.
I actually had a VDOT employee helping me haul hay, and we were going down this dirt road with a gooseneck load of hay. And we come across, the road had just been machined, it was perfect. And we come across 3 speed bumps that had been piled up. And so the next morning, they sent the machine back out there, leveled back out, and then the state trooper went and visited the folks at the house there. Because they actually contacted me and said, we're complaining that the state had taken down their speed bumps.
Holy cow.
And I said, they said, and they sent a state trooper out here. And I said, what did the state trooper say? Well, he said he was going to charge us if we did it again. And I said, well, then I wouldn't do it again.
They're a lot easier to make on a gravel road than a paved road.
Just take it away. Pound up.
200 people in Bones Mill, I mean, they love that road. And I told them, I said, you know what's going to happen?
Oh, yeah, speed will go up.
And so now they keep talking to me about people driving so fast. I said, well, forewarned.
Double-edged sword.
Yeah, it's like those center line rumble strips, everything has a cost.
Everything has a cost.
As I've always told my kids, where there's an action, there's a reaction.
Right.
Happens everywhere, so we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank y'all very much.
Laws of physics. See you, Dave.
Just in time.
I've been out there 2 hours.
Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You go back out?
No, you can hang in here. We'll let this lady back here.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah. I skipped you, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. I won't take up too much of your time. I just wanted to, Laura Sutphin with Floyd County 4-H. I just wanted to say thank you. I'm sorry I wasn't able to be here at the last meeting when some of our 4-Hers came and talked about the pictures that you all put in here for our photography contest. We're really honored that you wanted to use those photos that our kids took, and we're glad that we had so many participants in that project. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of come and talk about some of the things that we did this past year, because we weren't able to do a lot of our usual programs with 4-H because we weren't allowed to do, well, even at times when we were technically allowed to do face-to-face programming, we didn't have a space to do that because we weren't allowed to use a church or a school, weren't accepting outside groups. So we had to be really creative this year, and we have some kind of interesting projects that we did. I just wanted to share those things with you. Of course, in 2020, we weren't able to go to camp. They canceled 4-H camp they canceled all camps for the whole state. But we were able to go to 4-H camp this year, so we just went in June and took a much smaller group than we typically would because of the capacity of the camp. But we were really excited to be back at camp, and we had a good group of kids go with us, and it was a great week. It felt like camp, even though everybody had to wear masks. So we had a good time with that. One project that we did this year was we had a forestry project. So we kind of tried to do some more individual projects where kids were working on the same thing, but kind of across the county in their own, kind of socially distanced. We were able to get some from Virginia Tech and from the Forestry Department. We were able to get hardwood trees. So we had dogwood, 2 different kinds of dogwoods, mulberries, and oaks. And we were able to give those to the kids for free who signed up, and they took those trees and planted them. Some of them did it as a service project in areas that needed some trees, and some planted them at their home. And then they completed an individual project book about the trees that they planted and how well they did and how they learned proper planting techniques. So that was a really interesting project, something new to Floyd County, and hopefully we'll add some pretty nice trees around the county too. So another thing, and this is kind of an ongoing project, we started a poultry project this year. So kids signed up, and we are doing a hen show at the fair. So on September 11th, if you want to come out and see the kids, they're doing, it's not a typical, if you've seen a chicken show before, some chicken shows, they just show up in a cage and they set the cage down and leave, and the judges just judge the chickens. But what we are going to be doing is the kids will be having to show the chicken just like they would in a large animal show with sheep or goats. So they will be doing showmanship with their chickens, and we'll have classes with that. So the hens that the kids got for this project are New Hampshires, which is it's kind of an offshoot of a Rhode Island Red that's more docile and a little hardier and better egg quality. So we thought that would be a good fit for the project. We wanted ones that would lay large-sized eggs and be good layers for them to keep after the show. So they're raising them right now. They got them several months ago. We'll be doing a showmanship clinic for them later this month, and then they'll be going to the fair in September to complete that project, and they will keep their hens after that. But that's something that we're hoping to continue into the future, but that's kind of more of an individual project as well. We also, something that's kind of ongoing, is we have some water science kits. There are 4 different science STEM related, water related activities in the kits, and we still have some of those available. So if you know of kids who are interested in doing that, they get all the things they need, the instructions and all the materials to complete the activities for free. They just have to complete an evaluation at the end. That's the only requirement that we have for that. We were able to do some things with the schools last year. You know, that's a major part, of course you all are aware, that's a major part of our program, having those in-school clubs, and we do 3rd through 7th grade. We reach every kid in public schools with our 4-H program every month. And so this past year, of course, there were challenges with that because we were not allowed to physically be in the schools. So we put together a Google site and made videos and had so the teachers could show the video of us doing whatever the activity was, and dropped off supplies. And so we were able to, of course, not in the same significant way that we would in a normal year, but we were able to continue being present in the schools and to continue to offer those resources to the teachers who were able to incorporate it into their classroom with all of the limited time that they had. But we are meeting with the schools tomorrow to talk about our clubs for this year, and we are very hopeful that we will be back to pretty much normal. Our clubs are starting to meet again. And so this is one thing I just wanted to mention to you all as you're all across the county. We were able to meet again with clubs, and so I want to really focus on clubs this year. And that was kind of one of when I first came to Floyd, something I really wanted to work on. And then of course, you can't really recruit volunteers for clubs that aren't allowed to meet. So I think that's kind of, for this year, something that I really want to focus on is recruiting some volunteers and getting some community clubs started in the more rural areas of the county. So if you know of parents or just adults who would be good with kids and would be able to pass a background check, please pass along their contact information, and I will reach out to them and try to get some clubs started that could meet monthly and be some more, so that we can have some more community clubs in Floyd. I think that's a really big opportunity for 4-H. And we're also, this year really hurt our teen club because we weren't able to meet face to face with them, and they really enjoy that camaraderie that they get at those meetings. And so we're really looking to recruit teen volunteers, which would be members of that club, and then who would serve as volunteers when we go to camp. So if you know any teenagers who would be a good fit for 4-H, send them our way as well. We'll be recruiting for that pretty hard when school starts back. But anyway, and just if you have any ideas for programs or people who might be a good fit for a 4-H volunteer in some way, even if it's not a club leader, send them our way, and we'll be happy to chat with them and see where we can utilize their skills. Thank you. Do you have a question?
I would like to say that these pictures here, I mean, they've helped me as one, because, you know, I mean, it don't look so drab in here.
Yeah. It looks great
It's
in
sort
here.
of therapy too.
Yeah.
Start getting a little irritated or something, you look at all these pictures.
Yeah, it's nice to have something in here that's Floyd, that's really Floyd.
Absolutely.
So I think I'm really appreciative that you use them, and hopefully that's something we'll be able, of course that was a partnership we did with Farm Bureau with their women's committee. So I hope that's something we can do again in the future and are able to offer again for our kids.
I think it's fantastic. So.
Well, thank you, I appreciate it.
Oh, I'm sorry. How many children got chickens? Like, how many chickens
So
did you
we
get out?
have, I think we have about 25 kids.
That's cool.
And they each got 3 hens. So what they'll do is they will raise their 3. We give them 3 because of course things happen with chickens.
Yeah.
And there's a 95% success rate with the sexing, so it's possible that someone could get a rooster or that someone's dog kills one or something. Right.
Yeah.
So they just bring their best one to the fair to show. They pick out which one is the best, they think is the best, and they bring that one. But they all got 3 to start with.
That's great. So 25 kids participated. That's wonderful.
So we don't know. I don't know how many of them still have them. I don't know how many will show up at the fair, but that's how many we initially handed out.
Well, that's cool.
So we're hopeful to have a good turnout. And we're also going to do an open class at the fair too, just for youth, but for hens of any breed. So if there are kids who who didn't participate in the pullet show, they could still bring a hen that they have and participate in a showmanship class of that.
Yeah, that's great. I also just want to say personally, I'm excited if in person we're able to do the civics lessons that are done. I did it virtually last year, but I'm very much looking forward to getting back into our schools and teaching them about local civics and government. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm ready to be back in the schools. It feels and Penny and Cindy especially, who most of what they're doing during the year is being in the schools and helping with those programs. So it was very foreign to try to play, and also we all had to learn very quickly we had to pivot on a dime to learn how to edit videos and to create websites and do all of those things to even make it possible to offer something to the teachers last year. So that was a huge undertaking.
Job well done.
For all of us. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
I just want to say I'm so happy that the chicken project is going on, and we'd actually several years ago, I can't remember, I had to talk to John, but anyway, we went to Carroll County and they had something like that. And so, man, that's like kids raising animals is like one of the best things I think that can happen for children to have those responsibilities. And have you thought at all about partnering with farms on other, like beyond chickens on showmanship?
So we do have a livestock club, and most of those kids are doing lamb projects. And most of them keep their lambs at the Spanglers, so they are kind of partnering with them. But I think that's a good idea. I guess the reason I wanted to start with, and we do have, of course, the lamb show and the goat show at the fair as well, but those are ongoing things. But I guess for me, why I wanted to start with the small animals is because I feel like anybody, even people who live in town maybe, or who don't have as much space. Just as far as land and financially, it's a much bigger investment to have even a lamb or a goat or a cat. So it's very easy to have a chicken, even if you have almost no space. So, so that's kind of why we wanted to start there. In my previous position, we did a chicken and rabbit show, so that's something that we're thinking about maybe doing rabbits in the future, but the issue with that is that it's hard to find rabbit judges in this area. So we have to have someone who knows rabbits enough to be able to judge that class. But that's something, that's another option for expanding it. So.
If you ever wanted to expand to hogs or calves, I'd definitely be interested in helping with that. Or chickens.
Yeah.
I don't know, you may have a sponsor for that now. I don't know how the funding is for that. But if you ever needed help with that, I would, my wife and I both would love to.
Yeah, and I think I mean, of course, I grew up on a beef cattle farm, so I love cattle and would love to do a cattle show. I think as far as the fair goes, the reason that they haven't done cattle and hogs is because the facilities there are not conducive to holding those animals in a way that would be safe for the public. It would just be a big infrastructure cost to try to do the larger animals there. Of course, I mean, we could try to look into some other options. Maybe things don't have to be done at the fair either. We could do a separate show somewhere else, or there's options for that.
Sure. Yeah, I know for me growing up, I actually had this conversation recently. We had a milk cow, and my responsibility from 11 or 12 on was to milk the cow by hand twice a day. And I told him the other day, I said, how fondly I look back at that. He said, well, you weren't very fond of it then. I think it's so good for children to have responsibilities and to work with animals. It teaches you respect for life and just the way, farming and everything. So I really commend you.
Thank you, I appreciate
You're lucky if you just had milk.
That's raised on a dairy farm, you get half milk or something.
You did?
Yeah.
He had several.
You do?
Oh, the dairy farms are crazy now.
Yeah.
You go tour those things. The cows wear a little tag and they go in and milk themselves. Nobody even touches them.
Crazy.
And they can just go on their phone and say, this cow milked herself at this time and this time, and everything looks good. And here's her heart rate.
They keep up with the production and then how much feed and everything.
They're just wearing little cow Fitbits. They're really very high tech.
They are.
Very high tech, the dairy farms are now.
That's funny.
Well, thank you all for letting me share a few updates, and I will try to do this more often now that we're able to be here, and I hope that if you have any suggestions, especially for volunteers or people in your districts who might be good to reach out to, we really would like to get some more clubs started that are local for kids, because it's difficult, and especially in those far-reaching areas of the county, for kids to really actively participate in 4-H if everything that's going on is going on right here in the town of Floyd. So we really want to make sure that we're offering opportunities and reaching those underserved parts of the county with our programs. But that starts with having good volunteers and getting people out there who can be the face of 4-H for that community. So thank you.
You have a great day.
You too.
Thanks, Laura.
I won't set you down this time.
That's okay. That is a great program. Ms. Cromer works directly with Laura, and we love that. And as we expand our ag offerings at the high school, just like we're doing with computer science, we want to get feeder programs from the elementary school up to there. So, we love working with her, and definitely they'll be in the school. And as you saw, they'll be masked, whether we like it or not, and we've added quite a bit of that through legal counsel. And There's no other way around it. And there's no question, and I don't mind, I've done this for over 30 years, I don't mind saying, as superintendents, we don't like the way things were brought down to us through BDOE. We don't like the way things were brought to us at this point. It put us in a very hard situation all around the state, and there's no question that, you know, at least here, we want to have local control, local choice. We want families to raise their kids the way they want to and have local choice. So the dismay with that is being conveyed. We haven't had a meeting yet as far as superintendents with the BDOE, but my understanding it is being expressed to them that this is not the way that we need to be given information at this time. You know, what we want to do is, I'll get into some good stuff, but what we want to do is we want to make sure the bottom line, our purpose, and I tell you we have a purpose every day, is get kids into school, and we're going to treat every one of them the way that we would want to be treated and give them every opportunity. So we'll do that tomorrow, thank goodness, with all of them, and we'll do it in a way that we're within all legal parameters, and we'll keep watching from the standpoint of the health side, because it is a fluid situation, and when we can change, we'll change the mitigation, and we'll keep looking at that. We'll also keep looking at any legal actions that are out there, so we can serve all children, and we'll continue to do that. And along those lines, some of the facilities updates I gave last night, we are looking at single-use. We are going to be doing single-use restrooms in the new facilities, nice ones, and fairly private from that standpoint. And everybody loves privacy. And we'll look at our existing restrooms in our schools. And just like we did the last 5 years, well, I'll probably look for some firms to do a study and see what it would take to make the privacy much better. But, you know, currently we have many single-use bathrooms. We've been handling situations for the past 5 years, and we're going to continue to do the same thing. And we're going to continue to serve every student without infringing on other students. And I think that's what we've always done, we'll continue to do. Now, from that standpoint, thank you. This is the coolest year ever. I told our teachers that. It's incredible. It's incredible in those schools. And I will say that there's, what we have? We had 31 days in August, 1 in 31 chance. We are, with some of our ESSER funds, what was taken out of the HVAC project was overall controls in the schools. Willis's went out. These controls, the company doesn't exist anymore. So we got Willis. Well, Floyd High School is putting theirs in. We're getting theirs put in now. The one night that we have a board meeting is when the controls went on to control the unit in the auditorium. And the controls take over, so it goes off at 5. It came back on at 6 this morning. So, and with them working on it currently, you know, they'll be finished there. But we're moving around, and we'll talk more about our ESSER funds. It's not a great deal, and what we're putting back in is the air quality and the makeup airs, which is significant, but we have gotten to the point where we're beyond the price increases. So we're trying to lock in some things, and you know, as far as the equipment that comes in and delays on that, we have time for that because it doesn't interfere with education. We have AC and we have new heat. So we're in a good place with those upgrades. I came in at the 11th hour, but we have, I know Dr. Millsaps couldn't have been there, but we had a sit-down talk with our friends from Frith, and we got that parking lot done. I had a sit-down talk with our friends from Adams Construction, who was supposed to do that parking lot. That was a must. We don't have enough parking spots up there. We got it done. It's cured to the point. We're over curing it, whatever you do with that, and we'll open it up, grand opening tomorrow morning. So the first kid there gets to be the first car on. So, and then we do have they got ahead and connected the water to the building, and we got the road back opened up between the schools. That was kind of, let's do this now while we can in the summer. So that's worked out well. We're working with BSA and then the other company to make sure the water's good. So that's working out well from that standpoint. Once we get these rolling, it's just the construction side. I talked with our architect, Erica Sunshine, this morning. We met. Our job's going much better than most of them. Way better than most of them. We're fortunate because we ordered a lot of stuff ahead. I mean, it's still a tough construction time where you got to get workers in. One day there's 13 block layers, next day there's 5. And these gentlemen that are doing it have done it for years and years, and a couple of them own their companies that are out there. They're amazing. They know how to work with individuals. They get them back, but it's moving. It's moving, so we're going to keep moving with that, and we'll see where we are in the future. But so far, we got what we need to start school, and that's the beauty of it for right now. But and like I said, I think I hit the other tough issues, but believe me, we're going to express some dismay as superintendents with this, and dismay from the standpoint of leave it up to us, leave it up to our localities, and we'll make it work. So, you have any questions for me?
I just like to say that, and I've been telling people this, they don't listen. Don't know why, but anyway, y'all are in the same situation we are, and lots of times they start shooting the messenger, and it's not y'all's fault or our fault. When it comes down from the powers on high, you don't have a choice. So there's no use beating up on the local people, because we're in the same boat as a father and a grandfather. I mean, it makes my blood boil sometimes when I see some of the mandates that's coming down, but, you voice your concern, but get it higher up, real quick. And one question I had, this young lady a minute ago brought it up, and I wish, of course, I've always beat on getting the farming project started, but, when I was in school, which was many moons ago, we had that forest judge and, stuff like that. I'd like to see the schools do something like that again.
I think our focus is, well, like I said, we got those containers. We got a hydroponics lab. We're adding a couple things this year, but our big push, and we really need to get the farmers back together soon once we get this, and we'll put some funds into those 2 labs, is seeing what Floyd County needs, seeing what our kids need, which, like I said, there's some great 2-year programs at Tech in ag. There's a lot of things they can go to without spending a lot of time in college. But absolutely, we want to continue. We got 2 great ag teachers, two good farmers, 2 good young farmers that farm this county, and we're going to be open to a lot of things there, and we'll make sure there's funding to support them. So,
I had some young people. Doctors had me on a short leash for a couple of months, so I was having to get them to sort of help me out a little bit. But I'd say, clean this road down to this white oak, and then go out the hill. They sit and look at me, they wouldn't even know what a white oak was, or a hickory tree, or a maple one. I went up and said, I'm going to beat you with a stick if you don't point it out. I just like to see that, get back to basics. We're getting too far into technology and stuff. We need some basics.
That's not a problem. We'll look at our course offerings, and we'll look at a lot of that stuff comes with our 8th grade, comes with our feeder programs to that. So,
and I got 3 granddaughters just chomping at the bit to start more.
It's
the 4th one's sort of ho-hum, but she's so smart that the teachers even use her a little bit to helping with, some of their students. But, I mean, it's sort of boring for her because I can't keep up with her. They take her to the bookstore and buy her 4 or 5 books, and she's done read 2 of them before they get home. So, I mean, she just loves it, and so.
Well, we've added a student enhancement position here to help some of these kids that need another level to go, and so we're ready to go too with a lot of new things that we're doing. So it's just going to be so good to get every kid coming into school, to get every kid coming in on a regular schedule.
Yeah, they got their little backpack sitting aside the door and wait for.
Make sure they eat their lunch. Make sure they get their free breakfast, free lunch, even if they're packing. They may come back a little heavier after the first couple weeks, but they put some weight on. But they need to. So we're excited about getting back to be able, this first time in the cafeteria where they're able to expand. Last year was the first year, so that's a slow expansion this year, but there's some good things happening there too.
I want to thank you for what you said about making sure every child has the opportunity, because that's really what it boils down to, is making sure every child has an opportunity to learn. And I think that's what really the focus needs to be on, is giving equal opportunity to all. And that's what public schools are really all about. And I'm so excited about the air conditioning. I mean, this is.
Yeah.
You all need to go. Just stop in. You need to go. You need to see. Hit Floyd in the high school. The high school on the top wing in the back. You go up there because those are usually the hottest.
Oh my
rooms.
gosh, yes.
You've been in that humid hallway and then, but those rooms, it's amazing.
Just from the security, I just remember going to Floyd and having in the upstairs and having windows, the top of them open, and then you have. Whatever insects could come in, even if you've got screens, you still have, just having the windows closed, I think is going to be, security, from a number of areas. You have to wear a mask this year, at least you got air conditioning.
Yeah.
One thing if you're wearing a mask and it's comfortable, it's another thing if it's 85 and you're, got this mask.
85's at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
I feel like as far as discipline and, grade averages going up too, if they're comfortable, they'll work a little better.
It will. I mean, it does. Like I said, I think there's a lot of enthusiasm just getting back and back to, there'll be some anxious students, but there's a whole lot, and then we're such a small community, but those individuals in need, and they need transit, we know before, and and we got so much help, with the resources we have and the outside resources, and especially with the younger ones. I'm going over to a Head Start meeting, and we want to make sure we feed all those young ones now, and we're getting that contract done to make sure we get all those 2 and 3 year olds that those people are taking care of fed too. So, but every one of them is going to help. It's going to help everybody have air conditioning. It's going to help everybody be together.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I'll keep you up to date. I know, I appreciate y'all. This is like I said before, when you serve, you don't look for easy. And we got a tough time to get this county through, and I want to do it together, and if I need to voice our opinion to someone in VDOE, I'll be happy to do it, and anybody that I have connection to, I'll be happy to do it. But at this point in my life, I'm not too shy with the words. So. But I appreciate y'all. Go visit the schools. Wait till lunches are served, so give lunch at the same time. Okay?
Maybe we can get back on schedule.
Great.
I do have one thing for you. You asked me before, you had some extra freezers from the stand-up freezers.
I sent a note to Ladina to double check where we are on those.
Okay. If y'all have any extras, we'll take one. She offered some before.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good morning. Can I do a handout here? I made 6 copies, so I'll leave one with the administrative staff, and then I can just distribute those. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me this morning. We're going to switch from the children to older adults. Floyd County is very blessed to have a pretty high percentage of older adults. At least 25% or more are considered older, 65 plus. That sounds younger and younger to me. Right, so.
I just got patted on the shoulder.
There you go. But my name is Tina King, and I'm the Executive Director of New River Valley Agency on Aging, and we have had the privilege of working with the good citizens of Floyd since 1975. And it's been a while since I've been here, and when I met with Ms. Millsaps last week, I was delighted at the invitation to come and tell you a little bit about what we do, how we are supportive of the needs of older adults and caregivers in Floyd County, and answer questions that you have. But I also just want to thank you because you have been supportive in so many ways, not just monetary, and that is important, but just so many ways in what we've done. Past folks on your board, your administrative staff couldn't be more supportive of our efforts. So thank you so very much for that. We're one of 25 area agencies. I'll do this pretty quick because I want to get to the numbers and our services, but we're one of 25 area agencies on aging in the state of Virginia. And we're structured a lot of different ways. Some are private nonprofits, some are under just local governments like in Northern Virginia where they're larger. And then several of us are what are considered governmental cooperatives, which is what we are in the New River Valley, which we're an arm of local governments. We answer to 8 local governments, and we have board members that are appointed by each of these local governments. We're one of over 600 in the United States of area agencies on aging, so just give you a little structure on that. We receive funding from primarily from the Older Americans Act, which is federal dollars. It was formed back in the 1960s. And then, of course, through the Virginia General Assembly, our local governments and your funds help match the federal dollars and also help boost our service levels in many different ways. Then we get contributions and grants. We write a lot of grant proposals and minimal fees. With some of our services, we're allowed to do some sliding scale fees for folks who, you know, just because you own a house and you have a car and whatever, as your functioning level declines, you might need our supportive services, but you might have some means. So we can do some sliding scale fee structure on that for some of our folks. What we exist to do is to support and enhance the lives of older adults and help caregivers, you know, support their endeavors. And in some of our services, we do support the needs of those who are disabled but under 65. They may have Medicare and they have lots of questions and issues and concerns, so we can help them as well. I'm not going to go over every single service. That would take a while, but you do have a brief description attached to the back of your PowerPoint handout that I gave you if you are interested in a particular one, or if you want me to visit that when we finish. But our service area, of course, includes Floyd County, Giles County, Pulaski, Montgomery County, and the city of Bradford. And our services really help older adults gain as much independence, or retain, I should say, independence as possible, giving them their dignity as well to stay in their homes as long as possible and safely as possible. We divide our services into 3 main categories: supportive, which includes things like our home delivered meals. A lot of people call them Meals on Wheels. Those meals not only provide good nutrition, but a good check system on older adults that get them. We have friendship cafes. Currently, the one in Floyd is suspended because of COVID, unfortunately. We keep thinking we're going to get back into the Zion Lutheran Church, which gives us that space. But, you know, we haven't been able to as yet. We have homemaker services, which we contract out with a licensed home care provider. We have respite care to help caregivers to get some relief from their services or their work with their loved one. We have care coordination, which we have human service professionals that can go in and work with older adults one-on-one to determine what their needs are and help them find whatever it is, whether it's accessible equipment, whether it's supportive services through us, if it's home health, ordered through their doctor, just various things that will help them to stay in their home as safely as possible. Then we have educational services. We do a lot of information and assistance. We get a lot of calls from people all over the New River Valley and adult children and healthcare providers, medical providers about, this is a situation. What kind of services are you aware of? Are there anything in your bailiwick that you can help with, or do you know of others? So we do a lot of that. We have a speakers bureau where we can go out to civic groups, churches, etc., and talk about various topics, not just our services, but other things related to Alzheimer's and many other topics. We have a Caregivers Bulletin board that we provide on a monthly basis. Currently, it's in an e-newsletter. We do an annual conference, or we did until COVID hit, which was very well received by caregivers in the New River Valley. We have upwards of 200 caregivers attend that. And then Volunteer Pulaski, which is somewhat central to Pulaski, but that particular person that does that program helps others throughout the New River Valley that might want, such as Floyd, might want to get involved with our services, know where to plug their time and efforts in. We do a lot of advocacy. We help with elder abuse prevention. We work closely with departments of social services when there are folks who are having issues of that nature, exploitation, abuse, and neglect, to help plug in services as they're needed. We work with Southwest Virginia Legal Aid Services to refer folks who are having some issues legally, say landlord, tenant, let's say they want to update their power of attorney. That's very important. Looking at their wills, that kind of thing. And then also, last but certainly not least, in our advocacy area is our Virginia Health Insurance Counseling Program. That is something where we have unbiased, we have a coordinator, we have very dedicated and trained volunteers that work with older adults, their adult children, whomever, to figure out Medicare. And if any of you have Medicare, you know that it can be a circuitous route sometimes, and especially during open enrollment with the Part D. So we assist anywhere upwards of 1,200 plus people, especially during the open enrollment, which is coming up mid-October or early October through mid-December. Helping to give unbiased information that will help make that selection. And I have to put a plug in for our folks. This past year, even with COVID, we met a lot of folks by phone and virtual. Some we met in person, from a distance, but mostly virtual. We were able to document a savings of over about $428,000 across the New River Valley by helping people make informed choices about which plan they needed for this year. So it's like a little mini stimulus for older adults. The next four things I'm going to hit just really quickly, but I do want to point out supplies for seniors, staples for seniors, Fido's Pantry, and Santa to a Senior. All four of those programs are volunteer-based and are funded solely by grants and contributions. We don't use any government funds for that, and we have a wonderful response to that throughout all of our communities. And hats off to Floyd County. We just had supplies for seniors that citizens came up with the dollars and worked, I think, with maybe even some more businesses to purchase the supplies, and these are personal care supplies and household supplies that got delivered by the Floyd County Sheriff's Department. It was a wonderful endeavor, and I think, I'll take this time too to say that your Sheriff's Department does a wonderful job in checking in on seniors, so, hats off to them. And the others are kind of speak for themselves. The Staples for Seniors is kind of like a backpack program like the kids have. We send shelf-stable stuff in for weekends to our older adults. Fido's Pantry, as you might know, many older adults, their pet is their world. And then the Santa to a Senior is something that is seasonal, that we have folks that adopt seniors and provide some gifts for them around the holidays.
That's no need for that, Jerry.
That's what I was thinking.
So, moving on to the community impact, looking at some numbers. COVID has, I'm sure you keep hearing this is a recurring thing, but COVID has had an impact on some of our service levels, especially our in-home services. Many of our older adults, very wisely, have tried to figure out how to make things work without having someone come in their home. But we didn't miss a beat with our home delivered meals. I mean, you all know that food is so important. And it also helped keep that isolation more at bay too. We were able to continue our service, and in fact, the silver lining of COVID is it raised the awareness of concerns with isolation. Older adults, many of them face that all the time. And so as a result, many people were calling us and saying, what can you do to help? And we doubled our home delivered meals numbers from like when COVID started in March by August a year ago. So we're over 400 individuals that are receiving home delivered meals as I speak. In Floyd County, that's about 57, so it's a good number, Not all those get hot meals every day, but we are, if they're getting frozen meals, the ones in town are. But if they're getting frozen meals, we have a teleassurance program where we've got folks calling and checking on them in between the deliveries. Under the community impact information that I've given you, additionally, I kind of got stuck on the meals because that and our information and assistance numbers did skyrocket because people were looking for supportive things to help them. And then our VICAP numbers, I've already talked about that a little bit. Transportation, which we all know is a great need, those numbers did fall a bit because we primarily take folks to doctor's appointments. People weren't going to see the doctor. But we did continue our 3 times a week dialysis transportation from Floyd into Radford through that period, and like cancer treatments and that kind of thing. Those numbers are starting to pick back up. Floyd County service levels, I've already mentioned that this was like last year, so I could give you a year's worth of information. 57 different individuals, unique individuals, received meals during fiscal year 2020, and they received about 14,500 meals. Information assistance, which means people calling and asking, that was about 155 folks, and we had about 3,000 contacts from those. Insurance counseling, 262 individuals from Floyd contacted us about insurance counseling, and 11 people in Floyd were served through our legal services during that time period. So, one of the things that I think is important to note, that older adults do bring some richness into a community, but we also know that as we age and our functioning abilities start declining, they also bring some challenges. And no one entity can handle it alone. We just can't. We can't, nor do we want to, because we know that there are strengths within communities that exist that we may not know a whole lot about, but we want to. So, had the opportunity of meeting with Ms. Millsaps last week. I've met with Chad Alls. I have Dawn Barnes, who is one of your extension agents in Floyd County, wonderful lady. She and I have worked on committees for quite a while about aging in place or aging in community. And she and I are co-convening a group of interested folks to look at some reoccurring things that keep cropping back up in conversations. Transportation is a huge need. We know that within Floyd, and then maybe getting out of Floyd to doctors and things out of the area. We are very much wanting to be a part of that conversation and see how we can put more folks on the bus, so to speak, when it's safe. We are trying to coordinate if there are needs, folks getting to the doctor, definitely on those 3 days a week that we're going into Radford and taking folks, out of Floyd for that. We are more than ready and willing to do more medical transportation for folks 60 and older in Floyd right now, and coordinate with some of the other entities that might exist. I've gone through a lot of things pretty quickly, but one of the things, as I said, that keeps reoccurring, we all know, and I think Floyd County does a good job of this already in many entities, but maybe if we could look at older adults and some of the unique needs there and address some of those needs. I think it starts by seeking input from our older adults. We can sit and surmise all day long, what's needed. And looking at a national and state and even New River Valley area, transportation does continue to rise to the top, and I think that is a need for Floyd. I don't know if I should mention this, so stop me if you don't think I should, Ms. Millsaps, but one of the things that she talked about, and certainly don't want to dissuade anyone that needs an EMS person to come out and check on them, but the calls from a lot of older adults with EMS personnel are high. And there may or may not be a medical emergency. It may very well be that there are more supportive things that need to be put in place, or maybe there are medication management issues. Maybe there are other things that we can work on to help, with that situation. So I'm going to stop talking and answer any questions that you might have. But again, really, really appreciate this opportunity.
Well, if I may, I have a couple, and I think you answered one of them already.
Okay.
I was going to ask you if the number of volunteers had dropped during the COVID, but it sounds like if they have, you still more than covered what you were.
We did for meals, and certainly the information assistance was done primarily by phone.
Right.
But for meals we did, and I have to say, because, we have Giles and Floyd and the hinterlands of Pulaski County, Montgomery County in our service area, we do pay staff to deliver meals. We can't do the volunteer approach just because of, the service areas and that kind of thing. But, most of our drivers are retired,
Right.
or not needing, income to live on. So we did complete that, but, we are continuing at that same level, or double, actually. But what we are struggling a little bit with right now are drivers. We do have a program called MedRide, where we do use volunteers. And as you might know, people are a little bit leery right now. But we expect that to, pass, we hope, as others do before long. In the meantime, I've had staff come out and pick up folks when we can. We assisted a lot with vaccine transportation into Christiansburg before they started, the clinics locally in Floyd. We've coordinated with the health district to get folks in to do in-home vaccines. So, where there's a will, there's a way in some of these things. But having boots on the ground and folks out there and doing things with older adults is so important. And as I said, your sheriff's department just, aces that, and we so appreciate their efforts.
You mentioned, of course, the transportation needs and that sort of stuff. And this may put you on the spot, but I've been known to do that, haven't I?
That's okay.
What do you see as the biggest obstacle? We're coming out of the COVID, we've had a little relapse, but for your agency in general, maybe not just the transportation, but overall, what obstacle do you see in front of you that needs to be overcome, or that the local governments may be able to help with?
I think that's a wonderful question, and I think there are some direct answers and there are some that we may not know, but especially in rural areas, public transit doesn't exist as it does in, Blacksburg or Christiansburg. So covering geographical areas, public transportation in general is costly. It just is. But, going out in outlying areas and actually meeting people where their needs are on any given day can vary. So what we struggled with is trying to get, before COVID, more people on the bus so that we can maximize the cost of the driver and the insurance and the gas and the vehicle wear and tear, all that. We've had to stop that. We were down to just like one person on the minivan, in addition to our driver. We started putting two and trying to spread them out a little bit. But I think, coordinating so that more people can get served at a more feasible cost. But for us, there again, as I said, it's hard right now to keep drivers. It was even before COVID at times. It's somewhat hard to get people, even though they need transportation, to work with you on some of the scheduling logistics that can become an issue too. You know, let's say you've got folks that need to go to Veterans Care in Salem. You've got folks that have an appointment at 9, and then you have folks that have an appointment at 3. Well, you want them all to go together. Well, 3 o'clock isn't real happy about being picked up at 8 o'clock in the morning, you know. So, and then as you're older and you don't feel well, you know, there are just things.
And 8 o'clock's not too happy if I stay until 3.
No, that's true. So, you know, and so that's a logistical issue that we all struggle with. Now, as far as, you know, doing transportation within Floyd County, you know, there are different things that could be done. And Ms. Millsaps and I have talked about this a little bit too, and I think you said you had the regional commission, or kind of Kevin Bird is kind of helping look at maybe some planning grants or different things that can help determine some of the needs. But, you know, what we found, because we do, under the umbrella of the Agency on Aging, we fiscally and programmatically manage the Pulaski area transit. And we've kind of gone the whole gamut from, it's almost like running a taxi service, and we had to get away from that wasn't sustainable, to running loops in town. But we're also doing a study right now to do feeder routes, to pick people up in certain areas of the county on certain days and bring them into the town so that they then can transfer and do whatever their needs are while in town. As you might know, that works for some folks and it doesn't work for others. But there's a lot of different ways to look at, you know, meeting the needs once you really can determine what those are. Public transportation wise, you know, there is local match involved with that. And fortunately with COVID, they've gotten a reprieve. Our local governments have on that, but, you know, don't expect that to last. But I hope I answered it. It's
yes,
primarily...
And I think you covered the transportation part. Any other things other than the transportation jumping out at you immediately?
Yes. We have a heck of a time with getting in-home services. And we had one of our greatest providers, I have to say, that's worked the most with us yesterday tell us that they absolutely cannot get aides anymore. They just cannot to stay. They'll come and then they leave. And so overall, that's an issue, you know, helping people stay in their homes, getting their personal care done, giving caregivers respite, all those different things. So we are facing that right now. Floyd County, I mean, it's embarrassing. I have to tell you all, we probably only have one person right now that is getting some in-home services because, yes, like our homemaker service. Because getting aides, I mean, even before COVID, and I know I hate to sound like a broken record, but they make them pay for their own mileage. And so they don't want to come in rural areas and have to incur that cost. So we are looking at maybe hiring and training our own homemaker staff. We've done that in the past so that we can maybe locate folks in the communities where they live. But that is a challenge to try to help folks that need in-home services. And if you know anyone who may be getting what they call a waiver, an elderly and disabled waiver program, that's through Medicaid, and say they have 35 to 40 hours per week of personal care that's allotted to them to stay in their home, they're struggling, they're not getting it. And so subsequently, they usually end up having to go on to institutional care, to a nursing home. So that is going to continue to be an issue that we all are going to have to look at.
I just want to thank you and your staff for all the work that you do for all the citizens of the New River Valley, but in particular, Floyd.
Thank you.
And you talked about having a committee with Dawn. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
I will. It's kind of a spin-off. We have been since 2010, I guess, from a New River Valley wide area standpoint, but I have to say it's been more Montgomery County centric. You know, it just has been. And So Dawn and I have talked about aging in place and aging in community. And Dawn and I have talked, we really want to look within this county and see what the needs are, what resources are already there, taking stock, because sometimes it's just a matter of connecting the dots of who has what and how we can coordinate it better. So Dawn and I have talked about it, and she knows a lot of the key players, I think, here in Floyd County, and want to, nobody likes meetings, but we really feel like there's a need to look at, getting input from the community, looking at what resources already exist, how we're coordinating them, or how we need to be coordinating them, looking at some of those issues that keep rising to the top in each organization, and how we can best address them, and looking at the strengths within the community to do that. So she, I think she's got about 4 or 5 other people. She's convening it, but we're both going to be like co-facilitating it. She's hoping to get something going by the end of this month. I haven't heard back yet for a set date, but.
Yeah, because there are many of our folks here in Floyd that want to stay in Floyd.
Absolutely.
And I think that's everywhere. But, they can remain independent. Some have children that have remained, some don't. And it's very difficult. So, yeah, thank you. Kudos.
You're welcome. And I suppose if it's okay, Ms. Millsaps, through you, we'll keep them apprised of what this committee works on and getting input, certainly from you all as needed.
Thank you. Yes.
Thanks again so much.
Thank you.
And you have my card, so contact me at any time. My cell's on there as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If I'm not, Ms. Chair, I think you kind of have just a couple of things. Well, you have the closed session, and Ladina's back in the back if you're ready to go ahead and meet with her as one item. I had a couple of additional updates, and then Sheriff Craig left me a note that he had to leave for an appointment, and we'll be back after 11:30 if we're still meeting, which it appears you might be. So just to give you all an update of what I think is left on your agenda.
I'll step out for a second.
Oh, I